Thank you for coming in My Good Content, Molly Huddle, one of the co-authors with Sarah Slattery on, I have to show the book because I think the cover is great, How She Did It, came out March of 2022.
Yeah, thanks for having me here to talk about the book. I always love talking about it. And shout out to Patty Catalano-Dillon, who is the cover of the book. We love that photo of her.
Yeah, that's why I actually had to show it. Who did that actually? Who's the one that created the whole thing if people can see it?
The graphic designer Penguin, I think, made that for us. The woman in the book is Patty, and we found this like epic photo of her. It's a very popular photo of her finishing a race in Boston, possibly a 10K. I forget which race that is, but yeah, it looks really cool.
Yeah, it was great. That's why I had to bring it up and show it. So thanks for pointing that out. So in regards to that book, I know it came out in March of 2022. If you can tell me the story behind the book, how did it first come to thought? And then how did you and Sarah hook up about the book? And then what kind of brought you through that, if you can share your story?
Of course, yeah. So this was 2019 when we were thinking about the book, and it was Sarah's idea. She called me up. I was in Phoenix training, and she lives down there. And we know each other, Sarah Slattery and I, from just like years and years of competing together in college and in our pro careers. And I train so much in Phoenix, so we're friends. So we talk a lot. And she called me up one day and was like, hey, I know you're getting ready for the Olympic trials, but like, I have this great idea for a book. I think we should, share women's sports stories widely, but our aim is to kind of highlight some of the issues that young female athletes face when they're going through puberty, any roadblocks they face because they drop out at such a higher rate. And we'd seen some stories in the media about just, even young women's careers go badly because they have bad guidance from coaches. There was abusive coaching stories in the news. So we were just like wanting to create this mentorship book kind of and collect stories from our friends who are professional runners and, track down some of the legends in the sport of women's distance running and kind of create this little series where you get a little bit of guidance from each woman. And if you want to go look up more about them, great. That was our goal. So just like every chapter was a little bit. And then in the beginning of the book, we do have some experts like a chiropractor, a nutritionist, a licensed mental health counselor, a couple physiologists to give you that like key advice for how to take care of your body and how to train as a young woman in sport. But most of the book are these inspiring stories. So when she laid it out there, I was like, yes, I would have loved that book when I was, that age. I'll help you write it. Thanks for asking me. And then COVID hit, and it was a great time to actually call people because everyone was home. So we did all these interviews on Zoom, and it kind of took off from there.
That's fabulous. So when I look at that, you say there's 50 legendary distance runners in there. And I was looking at, and one that stood out to me was Shalane Flanagan. Her and her mom, first and foremost, it stood out to me because my sister and my mom, being runners together. And I wrote this down because her mom was the first woman to receive an athletic public university scholarship. I was like, wow, that is so cool. That's neat. And then she had, a record holder in the marathon. And then we know what Shalane's done. One of the things that stood out for me was the winner of the New York City Marathon. When she pulled that off, that was fabulous. So for you, though, when you have out of all 50, I know it's hard to probably pick a couple that might stand out to you, but are there any in there that maybe hit something with you when you were going through the interview process that stands out?
We loved the mother-daughter stories, so we thought that was a cool through line. Shalane's mom, Cheryl Twergy Bridges, and Shalane was a cool story because Cheryl was such a pioneer in the sport, and you see everything she went through from creating the sports bra to having one of the first scholarships to having to like battle her way to get onto starting lines in boys' high school races. And then you see what was available to Shalane when so much changed years later and how good she could become when she didn't have to spend energy like creating opportunities for herself. So we thought that was amazing. And I also really liked, for the same reason, the stories of the Clark sisters. I like that family through line of like what, Joetta's legacy meant for Hazel, how it made her kind of nervous and how Joetta was like able to compete into her 40s almost, like she was just like unstoppable, how different they were. And I also really liked, I know I'm not picking just one, I really liked Ailish McColgan and her mom Liz too, because she's coaching her now to such great success. And it just is cool to see that relationship and see how much she's learned from her time in sport, about, not letting Eilish train too hard too early, and how that paid off for Eilish later in her career. So I think those three probably stood out the most, those family ones. But the women in the book are amazing. We had 76, I think, women first, and we had to edit it down because it was just too much information. And so we even lost some interviews in there just because it was too long. And, we could have easily had 100. We just were trying not to overdo it. So could be multiple books.
Well, yeah, and it made me think even one most recently, like Nikki Hiltz in there, of where women's running came from, where it is today. I mean, I feel like after the Olympics this year, the women, especially distance and middle distance, amazing. So I feel like you probably have 150 even now. So I could see what you were going through with so many great women to interview.
Yeah, and like I said, we wrote it in 2019. So some of the people who are, starring and featuring at the Olympics, like, Nikki Hiltz, who's non-binary but feels very comfortable in the women's race and, accepted by the women's field. So it was great to have them in the book. But Nikki, Ellie Perrier, they were up and coming when we were writing the book. So some of it was like, oh, we'll have this young athlete in here. Who knows what they'll be doing in a few years. So it's cool to see these athletes also making Olympic finals right now.
Yeah, and she set an Olympic trials record in the 1500 too. So yeah, that's awesome. So when you were going through this book, I know COVID probably was tough, but it probably did work out for you too, because you're not racing. So you could spend some time on the book and the interviews and stuff. What were some of the maybe things you remember going through the whole process? Was this your first book?
Yeah. Yep. That was quite a process. We learned a lot. Yes. First book. And hopefully we have more coming.
You could have the next 50 legendary female runners. Well, I love it. So I know that I've seen on social media too, where you've gone out and you've been speaking to some local track clubs for females and stuff. If you can share some of the recent success that you've had that you've enjoyed and what they represent, and then any that are coming up for you and Sarah. I saw the one where you were at a cross country team. I love that with the young kids. That's fabulous.
Yeah, we went to the Blue Mountain cross country camp, and we were one of their speakers. And that was a camp I was a counselor at many years ago, a counselor speaker, Sarah as well. So that was kind of cool to come back 20 years later almost. And we like to try and do 1 or 2 camps a year. Last year we did 5-star and Aim High camp, also speaking kind of along the same lines. I guess only I went to Aim High, but I did, we brought the books, and it was really cool to share our story, as well as we shared some of the lessons from the first part of the book as far as how to take care of your body for longevity in the sport, kind of good mental health approaches to the sport so that you don't get, intimidated, burned out. What we really want to target is early dropout rates in sport, no matter what level you're at. Ways to approach sports so that it's fun and empowering and healthy. And for women and girls, that can mean some different things that get overlooked insofar as how you train through puberty to not, see it as a permanent setback, but, work with your body. Some dietary guidelines for avoiding things like energy deficiency, and some mental health, just little tips and tricks for managing stress and anxiety before races. So it was cool to share that, and then a little bit of our own story. And then, campers are always enthusiastic with questions. So we look forward to doing that again. We'd love to even start our own camp in the future. So maybe that's for the next year or so, but a girls' camp would be kind of a dream to have.
Yeah, I love the kids, because I go back to my sister when she used to always say they're 25% of our population, but 75% of our future. And just quickly, my sister's race, we started the Kobe's Kids Run for our dog, and we did a registration. We had 32 kids register for a kids run, which I've been doing local races all over the place for the last 35 years, and I've never really seen that many kids doing a kids run. So it's really neat to see the kids. So to hear you talking to the cross country runners, especially the females, I know what you're talking about with the puberty and stuff. I remember back in high school, you'd see some fabulous female runners, and then they might hit 10th and 11th grade, and sometimes they might steer off in a different direction or something. And, as guys, it was different. It was different for us. And I always thought that. And now even seeing some of the women, that are professionals and, they want to have children, and, to take time off to go through all of that and come back. I give women so much credit for what they do and persevere through, and to have a family and to be out there running and do what they do and put their family first and still compete. I think it's amazing. So every story that I was reading in here that pertained to that and what you're doing, I think it's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, sports look a little different for women if you're going to do it over the course of your whole lifetime. So we just wanted athletes to talk about that and how they got through those periods, and it's really the whole life cycle, right? So like puberty when you're a teenager, you have to get through that. And then if you want to have children, you have to run through that somehow. And then menopause, your muscles change, everything changes, you run through that. But running is a lifetime sport, and competing is so fun that we want that information out there. So many books to do about all those other changes we go through.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I love it because if you're doing these young girls, if they hear it, especially from people like yourselves and the women that are in this book, that is going to help them as they go through puberty and different things. If they can look at it as a lifelong sport, like you're saying, instead of maybe thinking, oh, I'm in 10th grade, 11th grade right now, and oh, I'm going through this, and maybe stopping or not doing it for certain reasons versus looking at it as a lifelong sport.
Mm-hmm, totally. Yeah. And when you're at that age, everything seems forever and so big and so immediate. So we like that you can look ahead with these ladies and they can tell you what happened to them, and just gives you perspective.
That's right. So in looking at the book, I came across some questions that you and Sarah asked the 50 individuals in there for the interviews for the book. If you don't mind, I'd love to ask you a couple, because I think they're, I wouldn't say basic, but there's some questions in there that you can get so much information. And obviously, if you picked, there was 12 of them, if you two picked those to help write the book, they must be very important questions. So I'd love to see what you might have to say to some of those. Is that okay?
Sure. Yeah. And we were hoping, like, with those questions, they were just things to get people talking, just get the story rolling, get some information, and we hoped stories would tumble out from there. So yeah, we thought they were good basic structures.
I don't want to ask you what the first question I know is, what were your PRs, because you have, I mean, millions of them. So unless you want to share a couple of PRs that stand out to you for yourself.
Well, I remember we asked high school PRs and professional PRs, and I don't know if I remember high school PRs. I could look in the book, maybe a minor in there. I think for the...
You didn't have a cross-country team at first.
I didn't have a cross-country team, so that was only a team of one, but it was a very eye-opening season because, I wanted to make it to Foot Locker, and I did, and then once I got there, just seeing the type of girls that were there competing was really eye-opening, and seeing some of the girls who, were really good there but didn't pan out even 2 or 3 more years, that was really eye-opening. Foot Locker was a great experience. I think I was 4th there, and then I'm trying to remember what my 3K and 1500 PRs were. I remember 10:01 for 2 miles at the national meet my senior year of high school, and then 1500 I kind of don't remember, 4:20 something, which the times are so much faster now.
Well, still 10:01 in a 2 mile, that's pretty quick.
Yeah, that was a national record at the time, but now that would be like, I don't even know how that would rank now, but it would definitely not be the fastest.
Well, some of the times, Ingebrigtsen, I just watched him the other day in that 3000. I don't know if you saw that, but just men and women nowadays, I'm like, it's crazy what the mid distance and distance is becoming.
It's taking me a while to wrap my head around some of the times, for sure. Like some of the women's times, especially, I'm like, wait. Usually I relate it to my own self, and now I can't anymore because it's more like a men's time, like 28 something in the 10K, for example. And like, I can't actually, it takes me a minute to like do that math.
It's crazy. I mean, just the overall speed of the whole race, like going out and like I know the women's 1500 meters, they're at the finals, like they go out like 59.
Yeah, 59. I was 59. Like, wait, Kurt, that would hurt you in the first lap. Like I was talking to my husband, we were watching it, and I was like, can you imagine being in this race like when you were in college?
Well, it's funny you say that, because back when I ran competitively, I used to think of myself sometimes when I'd watch the Olympics, like women, I'm like, oh, where could I maybe be with the women now? Yeah. And now I'm even like watching, like, wait a minute. I mean, that's just like...
it's just taken off so much in the last few years. Yeah.
Yeah. It's great to see, though. I mean, it's awesome. Yeah. I mean, it was like all the women in that 1500 meters that broke 4 minutes this year. Yeah. And you look at the 10,000 and the 5,000, the women, what they did this year at the Olympic trials and Olympics, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's exciting. I mean, you hope that the next waves get better and better. And so you don't know how much is technology, how much is better training, but people are faster for sure.
Well, and also keep getting your word out about how she did it. 'Cause that's, young girls that are out there right now. I think that some of those things are bigger even sometimes than technology and different things, because if you can teach the youth of the world today specific things, they can work through the processes differently than they may be used to without the knowledge.
Yeah. So. I mean, that would for sure, I think, help women to focus more on strength than like losing weight or overtraining, or, you need to be strong and powerful, and to just have that mindset of like fortifying yourself is going to help you run faster.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So another question you had was, major setbacks, challenges did you face as an athlete? So what major setbacks and challenges did you face as an athlete?
My My setbacks and challenges early on were the basics of injury. I'd say I probably had energy deficiency my freshman year of college, senior year of high school, like many of the girls did. My nutritional information was just kind of like archaic. I thought, if you want to eat healthy, you eat a salad. Little did I know like how important protein is to a woman runner. So I kind of learned that as a pro, but I think it did contribute to some of my bone injuries in college, they were all foot injuries. So a lot of that was biomechanical, but a lot of it was probably bone health too. So luckily my pro career, I didn't have very many bone injuries. And then after that, I would say I was lucky. I had really good mentors. Otherwise I think I would have really struggled with the confidence. Like I would watch Shalane, and she was a few years ahead of me, and I'd be like, I could never do that. But then like I did run that fast. So if I didn't have someone as good as her and a coach who was very good in my own corner, I don't know if I would have like thought of myself as being there. So luckily I had that on my side, and that wasn't a struggle, but I think it would have been. And then, yeah, after that, I think just trying to get over really high profile, disappointing performances, right? So like you go in and try and medal and you don't, or, and that's not just 2015. That's a lot of years I went and tried to medal and didn't, and it was really disappointing. And so bouncing back from those kinds of things, and just when you're in the sport a long time, you take lumps and you have ups and downs. So just kind of being resilient was important for that.
Well, and that's an interesting question that I just asked that you actually came up with, because it really, where you are at your sport, like you said, it's a lifelong sport. Like if I were to answer that, I'd be like, oh my gosh, the last 5 years, I had more than maybe the first 25 years of running. But so that's an interesting question for, where you're at in your career as well. I love this one too, because what was your best race following your setback? So was there a race? I know you've mentioned some things with bones and different things, but was there a race after one of your setbacks that stands out?
I'd say if like my big setback of like trying to medal in 2015 and coming up short in such a big embarrassing way, I'd say the whole 2016 season was a really good comeback. I guess I would say it culminated with the Rio Olympics, setting the 10K American record there, and also my first marathon a few months later going so well, finishing third in New York. So yeah, I'd say it was kind of those two things, I guess, but it took a whole year of really great training, like things going in the right direction for a whole year to get there. And I think it was for sure just that mental shift of like, okay, this is how you get over something disappointing. You pour yourself back into things. And to an extent, it worked really well. I suppose you can't do that forever, but I didn't. I just focused a little harder somehow because I thought I was focusing hard before. And it just was a great year.
Well, that's awesome. So not with just one race, but you followed up with a great year the whole year. What are you most proud of in your running journey? I mean, you've had an incredible running journey and it's still going. What would be maybe most proud a moment or two for you?
Oh gosh.
Besides that year of 2016, which was phenomenal.
Yeah, I guess proud of, the American records, even though they didn't stand, I was proud of them because they were such a surprise. I never thought I could run those times. So they give you confidence and they're fleeting, but I was proud of those. And I think just proud of, trying to get involved in the sport, like beyond racing and beyond running, and try and make things better for the next generation. So I'm not really done doing that. I actually feel like I'm only just getting started doing that as my running winds down a little bit. But yeah, if I can change things at all, proud of that.
That's great. And going back to how she did it, I mean, I love seeing that because it's all the things you've learned and what you've gone through, and then, helping other people learn, which I think is great. Two of when you use, I like showing the books. I love the cover, but with the 50 women that you have in here, it's not necessarily just your experiences and Sarah's. It's, 50 other women that are legendary in their experiences. So I think that's so impactful versus sometimes maybe one person writing a book. So
yeah,
I got that out of there. I think that's awesome.
Of course, too. And Sarah and I talked about this, how like you see how the sport is going now and how fast people are running now. Sometimes I'm like, do I know about track and field? Like, look how fast everyone's running now. I'm not going to claim that what I did was perfect, but it's more just about here's what people did. Like, take comfort from that, take motivation from that, learn lessons from that. I think it's just cool to have that, like I said, like a mentorship group, or at least just like the group I fell into after college. I felt like I was so lucky to have such great athletes who were really good role models. So if we can like build that in a book, that's kind of what we were trying to do.
Well, and some of your early role models were the slugs.
Yes. Way back in my Elmira slugs days, where we would go to road races with like blizzards going on.
And they were back then. I mean, that's how I kind of grew up with groups like that in Binghamton, of like being young. It's like, look at these guys. It's like 10 below and snow. They're training for the races. And it was like, all right. And they were role models.
Yep. That's why New York kids are so good. We're tough.
Well, the hills, the weather.
Yep.
But if you can train through a winter up there, I mean, you can train anywhere.
Totally.
I mean, I still think it's living in Florida. It's harder training in a winter in upstate New York than it is down here in the heat in the summer.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
What did you learn and what would you have done differently in your career? And I think this is a good one based on like what you're saying with the book. It's teaching the youth different things. So that's a great question.
I think I learned it's going to be a long career, you're going to be able to do it for a long time. So try and take that perspective. I always felt a sense of urgency, and then I just held that for like 20 years. I always felt like what if I'm done next year? What if I'm done next year? So kind of to an extent, you never know as a professional athlete how long you have, but just to try and, I guess, enjoy things more, let things unfold at more of the natural pace it was going to. Distance running is one of those sports. It takes a long time to build up to your peak, and the way I did it, I think I was my best possible self at 32. And, the athletes I was observing before me were not competing really that far past their 30s. And so, just having that in mind of like, now we see women competing really well into 40 and beyond. So just trying not to panic, I guess, as much about that. I mean, you don't want to take anything for granted, but I felt like that's what my mindset was like. And I guess some of the things I learned were just, I don't know. Yeah, maybe I would have taken a few more breaks if I had done anything differently. Once I got into marathon training, taking more of a long break instead of trying to fill in all these road races between my marathons. Because I'm just realizing for my body, like this is sustainable way to be a marathoner and do 2 marathons a year would probably be to not do too many other races, because you really need a lot of downtime. You need more than your little 2-week break, for at least I do. So looking back, I probably would do that differently.
Well, it's interesting you say that with the breaks, because you see the Olympics just finished and you're already seeing all these people do these Diamond League races already. Like everyone that was just in the Olympics, they're right back at it. It's like, when's the break?
I think that track mentality is like, well, for these shorter races, you're fit. Why don't ride this body until I'm on fumes. But for the marathon, it's much different. It's a very different sport. And I feel like you get beat up biomechanically, or at least I do, the way I run. And so I was so used to like, and then you can do this race, take a little break. And it's really more like you have 2 races on your calendar and that's it. And you build up and then you taper down and then you build up again. And so I think it's just a much different, for me, it should have looked much different. So that's my own doing. I think my coach would have been fine with that. I always want to do every race on the calendar. So, that's just the way I am. But I think that's one thing I would have changed.
Well, that's a good one. I mean, I think too, when I look at shorter races, like the 100, 200, 400, they can rebound quickly. But I feel like sometimes with the recovery tools that we have nowadays and different things we have, and maybe even footwear for recovery and different things, like people bounce back even faster. I feel like sometimes to be able to race more and do more. Just my 2 cents on some of that.
And some people are just good at that. I mean, that's their strength. I think I'm someone who's kind of more on the lower end of that recovery speed. So you just got to learn what your body is like.
So you've already spoke about this a little bit, but what makes up and who makes up your support system? I know you talked about your support system a little bit. If you can expand on that.
Yeah, my support system was my husband, Kurt. He didn't work really. He supported me. So he got in coaching, strength and conditioning certification towards the end of my career, and that really helped. He traveled with me, paced me. He was, helped book travel and things like that. So I think that's, a lot of the really great women runners, that's the model. Shalane's husband was very supportive. Dina's husband was very supportive. Paula Radcliffe's husband was very supportive. I'm not saying I'm on par with them. I'm just saying there's oftentimes a family support network in that way. So he was all in. My coach, Ray Tracy, my agent, Ray Flynn, and my chiropractor, John Ball, who was so important to keeping me in one piece. And then my training partner. A couple of my training partners were a few years ahead of me. A couple were a few years behind me, like Emily Sisson. But the women a few years ahead of me, we weren't doing stuff that different. It was just so helpful to see what they've learned and where they were going with it. It was like your next footstep for me. So I would definitely say the couple women I trained with year in and year out.
I know you've had this amazing career. It's still going, like I said, but is there a go-to workout for you? And it might be much different now than it was, 10 years ago, but like, what's your favorite workout that you do?
I always will love 400s. Yep. Just like, I don't know, somewhere between 12 to 16 400s with like, I don't even care what pace they are. I just like 1 laps. One lap's on the track. They don't hurt, but you still feel good afterwards. Like you still feel fast, like you did a workout.
You know, it's interesting you say that because when I ran at BU, I ran the 800 and the 400. The 400s were a big part of our workouts. And I always liked them too. And the reason I liked them was I was always like, all right, one lap, which is one lap. And in a lap, and whether you're running a mile or whatever distance it is, you always break it down to like there's a lap to go or whatever it might be. So as you did the workout and you're fatigued and you're tired, know how you ran so many of them that you're like, I can get through another lap if you're exhausted at the end of the race. So it always helped me that way.
Yeah. You can do anything for one lap.
What's your most interesting and funny race story if you have one?
Oh gosh. See, I'm always terrible with the funny race stories. I don't really have one answer for that one. I guess I had a couple mildly funny training stories, but races never really went that crazy as far as funny. One training story that we always laugh about is we went to Tucson one year for the winter, and my training partner, Kim Smith, went as well, and my husband and the Torres brothers, Jorge and Ed, and we were running in this like pecan field every day, and there was a lot of like plants and trees and stuff. So the one day Kim stopped to go to the bathroom, and she accidentally sat on like one of those jumping cactus things. It's like you barely touch it, and they kind of jump onto you, and so she got it stuck like in her butt, and so I had to go help her like take it out, but then it got stuck in my hand, and so we were all just like yelling, and the boys were like, what's going on over there? Like, are you guys okay? We were like behind this bush. And it's funny, the little prickers stay in your skin, under your skin for a long time. Like I had the prickers in my hand for like a year and a half. And I don't know how long Kim's were in her butt for, but we always, like every time I felt it, running? I would laugh. Yeah, we finished the run. And then actually it was like started hailing and we got stuck in the mud. It was crazy.
You know what story that would be great for? You ever see those things like on social media or somewhere they say like a certain sport and they're acting like, oh, like babies in a way or something like, oh, and I had to get out of the game because this injury, like you have a jumping cactus that jumps all over you and you still finished your run.
Yeah. I mean, it was a mild injury, but it was just like kind of funny the way it happened. And they are really hard to get off because they just, every time she tried to get it off, it would stick to her hand and then it stuck into my, like it just like sticks everywhere. But it was funny.
Well, that's a good story. I've heard about those. Whenever I've gone out west, I stay away from cacti.
Yeah.
Probably because of those kind of stories, but that's a good one.
Yep.
Well, this is good because I really like this question because especially all 50 women, if they talk about it and then younger girls hear this, but if you could give advice to other girls in the sport, what would it be?
I would say take care of your body and work with it. It needs to be strong. And I like that word fortified. You need to be fortifying it. So like, when you're out there running, that's making you stronger. In the weight room, you need to get stronger. When you go refuel, you need to rebuild and fortify. And you want to be a strong body who takes up space. And that's the way to have a long, healthy career and a long, healthy body, even after sport. So I would say that.
And I like how you keep saying, long running. It is something you can do your whole life. And if you're patient when things, you get an injury, don't feel like you have to come back too quickly. It's something that you can do for a long time. So what has been the most rewarding in your running journey? I feel like this one might be tough with so many things, but what do you feel is the most rewarding in your running career?
It is. And Sarah and I have talked about that too, how we feel lucky that we feel rewarded by our career because we know there are some women who walk away from sports feeling, torn down or diminished or like that it wasn't worth it. We always say the people we meet, the relationships, I feel like the experiences made me stronger and that I had people around me, luckily, that, helped me grow. So I'd say that was rewarding. Just the experiences. I don't know. It just was like a really cool environment. You got to travel and have, crazy things happen to you, competing in front of a lot of people and coming out the other side. So it was a wild ride. I don't know. I think it was all really valuable.
It's almost like one of those things that if you're a runner, because I look back, every PR I've ever had, I never won the race. And it was always like, if the person beat me, whoever it might be, you're happy for that person, you're shaking hands. I think that's just something awesome about running too. It's just to your point, like the whole trip is rewarding. It's the friends you've made along the way, the people you've met.
Mm-hmm. And just like so many days at practice and so many times in races, you're trying to get the most out of your body. Like that's such a weird experience to get good at that, to get good at pushing yourself like that. And so I feel like it's a really cool part of your brain to have developed. So we'll see what it can do.
Especially you running marathons and stuff. I mean, I've only run 2, but when you're doing those long runs and if you're out there by yourself and it's a cold, windy day or a hot, sunny day. I mean, you're out there by yourself a lot of times. I think it's what's so neat about that is you're out there doing so much on your own. And to get through all of that, your mind's thinking and different things. And it's just rewarding to be able to do that on your own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to know you have those tools is kind of cool.
Yes, yes. Well, that was the questions that you asked, which makes this book such an amazing book. So anything else you want to share with us with how she did it? Any future things you have coming up where you're going to be going? I know you said that you're going to try to look her 1 or 2 times a year, that you're going to go out and speak to younger females in sport. Anything planned up for the rest of this year or no?
Not really. We don't have anything formally planned. Like I said, we're talking about trying to do a camp. I guess we have to see kind of how things shake out detail-wise as far as date. Sarah already does have a camp. So, do we kind of turn that into something like this or start another one? I'd say that would be kind of our next project. And yeah, we hope to write another book. So we're kind of coming up with pitches now. When she was up here last week, we nailed down some cool ideas. So yeah, more women's running books.
That would be great. Can't wait to hear about that. So this book, amazing. Thank you for coming on. It's been out since March of 2022. Is there anything else that you'd like to share about how she did it to the people out there that are listening?
Yeah, thanks to everyone who supported the book. We're really happy to have it out there. And we often get asked about buying the book for a whole team. It's great for high school and college aged teams of all levels. So if you go to our website, there's actually bulk ordering. The details for that are at our website, howshediditbook.com. And yeah, thanks to all the women who contributed stories. We hope that your chapter is just a jumping off point for people who read the book and become super fans.
Well, thank you very much for coming on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Byron.